Well, hello, friend, and welcome to the Celebration Machine. I'm your host, Pete Hammond. If this is your first video, welcome. Thank you for spending a little bit of your time here with me. And if it's, you're a recurring viewer, I do appreciate your patronage. This is my sixth episode, and for this evening's episode, I'm going to put myself in a kind of a cringy spot, a little embarrassment. That's okay. I've been there before. I'll be there again. Actually, I was talking to my wife about the last episode, which I really enjoyed making, and it was with Bahia, who's an incredible woman. If you have not seen it, it's the episode previous to this. It's a deep conversation about healing with Bahia, who's a really awesome person who's very steeped, I guess, in the healing traditions. She's a personal friend of mine, and we had a powerful conversation, part one, which is one of many, but we're going to have another one probably pretty soon because that one's been getting a good response. And my wife watched it, and I trust her opinion, and she sees everything that I do. And she mentioned that in the conversation, Bahia and I talked, we got very excited, and it was awesome, but that we talked about things, and it came across that the viewer knew what we were talking about. And she wasn't saying that to be saucy or try and poo-poo on the parade, but it's a good point. And if that happened and you saw that video, I apologize, and I will give you more sort of backstory. Doing this is new, and I also assume that people know who I am, not in a cocky way, just that if you're watching this, you're a friend, because that's the mentality I have at this point, that only my friends and family are going to watch this, the beginner white belt mentality. Why would anyone watch this? Well, hopefully because it's great. But I said, well, and that in that video, we talked about, both of us having had gone through the cancer experience. And I think I mentioned it before in a video, but it's not something that I kind of want to shout off the rooftops for a multitude of reasons, but not because I'm embarrassed by the experience, but because I don't really want to let that experience define me or be known as, the cancer guy, because I kind of have been that before because of my own actions. So I'm sort of treading a little more lightly. And what I wanted to talk about tonight is because I wrote this book, and this isn't a video to sell a book, but I wrote this book back in 2014. It's called The Bad Times Bible. Okay. And that's a picture of me in a bathroom at a comedy club, and I was trying out filters, and I thought it'd be cool for a book title. But anyway, it's Bad Times Bible. I was selling it on Amazon back in 2014. It tells the story of when I lost my mind as a young man. And let me put this over here. I wrote that book because I really wanted to try and integrate that experience, put it behind me, put it in the rear view. And because I had been a cancer patient back in 94, and back then we didn't have cell phones. Well, at least I didn't, and iPhones and all that sort of thing. And information was passed on still primarily by conversations. And people's experiences. I think the internet was around, but I certainly didn't have it. No one I knew had it. And that experience, I was glad that I went through that experience at that time. For as isolated as I did feel, I was glad not to be inundated with information and to sort of, it put me in a very personal space. And I used that time in those waiting rooms to really try and figure out what was happening. But years later, I just couldn't get it out of my head. I had all these stories, and I was having conversations with people, and I'd run into people that were going through treatment, and they had questions. And when I was going through the experience, I couldn't find a book that really spoke to what I was going through as a young man and as an angry guy. I had mentioned before that I was a young angry man at one point, and I certainly was at that time. So my wife mentioned that, not you assume that people know you had cancer, and if this goes where you want it to go, a lot of people won't know until you're not going to know anything until you tell them what you want them to know about you. So I wrote that book, and I wrote that book because I really wanted to sort of, well, the story wouldn't leave me alone. The book wouldn't leave me alone. And I can't remember specifically what had happened, but something really rough was happening. And I went for a drive, and I parked in this old abandoned kind of rail yard type place, very dramatic place to think. And I said, okay, universe, what do I do now? And I heard you got to write the Bad Times Bible. So I said, okay, opened up a Word file on my old laptop and started it and self-published it and sold it out of the back of my truck and spoke in schools, and I had a really good time with it. And it was a terrifying experience. Once again, vulnerable, exposed. And this isn't a video about writing a book, but that experience in itself was a very intense experience. And consequently, I've written, currently finishing off the third book in a trilogy, which I'm going to be releasing. It's fiction though. It's a crazy story about sort of the stuff we talk about: life, death, aliens, all this kind of shit. Even though we haven't got to aliens yet, but we will. God damn it. Anyway, the point of this video is I wanted to introduce that aspect of myself to the celebration machine, because really that is sort of the nucleus of where this began. If you've seen my videos, or have, if you know me, I do funerals, and I used to do weddings, and how I got into all that stuff. But really, it was about being in a flow state. I remember coming home, and I think I said this in the video before, but I asked myself, after a particularly intense funeral, why I did it. And I spoke to it in a video again, but it was because it puts me in a flow state and it makes me feel incredibly useful. And that first feeling of really being in a flow state came to me when I was a cancer patient going through that experience. So I don't want to say I got addicted to it, but when you feel that level of intensity, and life focuses and sharpens to the level that it can when you're in an experience that's as intense as what a cancer diagnosis brings, and treatment and whatnot. It's not something you really find anywhere else. And I know that certain people, you survive that experience, you integrate, it affects you in different ways, certainly. But for me, it left me with, I remember the last day of treatment, I was doing my last radiation treatment, and I finished and I got off the machine, and I remember I started walking towards the door, and I looked out and I saw my father, and I just walked right into the corner of the room, and I let go of all the feelings and all the things I'd been holding for the duration of my treatment, because I'd chosen to go to treatment alone, not because I'm some stoic tough guy, but as I've mentioned before, I couldn't I couldn't bear I couldn't bear the intensity of people's emotions, and I was just doing what I could to maintain my own sense of sanity and composure on a daily basis. So I preferred to be alone in the experience. And I'm a thinker, and needed to think, and I needed to chew, and ideas and thoughts, and write down little notes. So I always had a little book with me. So I kept a lot of notes, and then finished treatment, and then my first job was in a cemetery. I was working on burial crew. And if you've never had the opportunity, go work in a cemetery. Like anyone's going to do that, Pete. But it was the perfect place for me to work post-cancer treatment, because it was quiet, it was good physical work, and I had the perspective of life and death all around me. And I remember one day we'd read the obituaries and see where the people were going to be buried, because, we're a bunch of dudes working in a cemetery, and a lot of times things would happen, and you'd get to kind of know the people that you were burying. And one day I read an obituary, and it was a young man. We were the same age, and he'd had the same kind of cancer as me, and he passed away. And I remember it was weird, because I was having a rough time. I'd lost my mind before I was officially diagnosed with cancer, and I was partying and being a young crazy lunatic, and kind of lost my way a little bit, and cheese slipped off the cracker and had a psychotic break at work. That's a whole other story. But I was having a shitty day and feeling sorry for myself, if we're going to be honest. And so I got my coffee, and I picked up the paper, and I'm going through the obituaries, and I read, this young man, we're the same age, we just went through the same disease, and he didn't make it. He didn't survive it. And I got the ticket too, to bury him. So it was a weird thing to be burying a guy same age. I just went through the same thing, but I'm on one side of the shovel in the grass, and he's on the other. It was. I mean, I knew his name. I talked to him, as I did the burial. I was talking to him, and I had a cry. I was by myself, and I had a cry, and I felt for him, and I felt for me, and it was a little letting go, and a little because it was intimate, and I felt like I knew this, I knew what this person had gone through, and I felt for him, and then I felt guilty that I kind of made it and he didn't, and it was mind blowing, and that was just one of many, many things that happened at that cemetery that really helped me understand what I'd gone through, and then made me feel a little more in my body, and a little bit more sort of comfortable with my experience, and what had just happened. And I learned so much, and there was great people there. But then, you meet people and you're telling the story over and over again, and you're telling, I'd meet, oh, Peter, he had cancers, and this person's cousin's got cancer. So I was getting connected to all these people. So I thought, well, shit, man, I'm going to write a book. And that way I can just be like, hey, check this out, go find somewhere quiet and read it. And this, again, still in the time when cell phones were starting to become a hell of a lot more prominent, obviously 2014, but there's people that read. It's a more intimate experience. And I'm a writer. I love to write. I love words. I love books. So I wrote a book and promoted it and had a great time. It didn't get famous or rich by any means, sold, I'd go for drives and sell it out of the back of my truck and meet strangers and people crying and hugging me, and we just talking and connecting. But it was about that flow state, and writing puts me in a flow state. And, the cancer experience put me in a flow state when I could get through the anxiety and the fear and the chaos. I could find myself in a flow state, moving through the experience in a healthy way. But I just kind of wanted to bring that into the realm of the celebration machine, because that is sort of where the nucleus of it was. Because as I stood in that corner, I remember thinking, if I could take this feeling and sell it, I would be a billionaire and the world would be a better place. Because I've never felt anything like that before in my life. And I don't have the words for it. I still don't have, there's a few experiences I've had in my life that I cannot describe. And obviously I'm a talker. I'd like to consider myself well read, but I can't describe it. Like, if I was trying to describe it, it would be if I felt, for all you people that have had children, I'm sure the minute you see your child being born, again, I haven't had that experience. I've not been blessed with that experience. But that moment of kind of figuring out what love and life is, from what I've heard on an overwhelming scale, it was like that to me. But it was about being alive and feeling alive and getting a second chance and all these powerful things. And I'd like to do, I'm going to bring that up with Bahia about what it is to what survivorship can be like, and the sort of the many sides of cancer survivorship, and how you integrate it into your life, and how you can kind of get into some dark roads. But the point is that that's where that really started, the celebration machine thing. Because, man, I was happy to be alive, and it was like, I wish I could describe it, but it was like winning the lottery times 1,000 million bazillion, falling in love, having your first kiss with the person of your dreams, having your best meal with everyone you love. For me, it was like meeting God, I guess. I don't know. It was crazy powerful. So I wrote that book to put all that experience. But now as I read it, I find some parts of it cringy. I'm not going to lie. I was a wounded healer when I wrote that. Look it up, Google wounded healer. I thought I had integrated my experience a lot more than I was still learning a whole lot about myself as I was writing that. Writing that book was a way for me to learn about myself and for me to really understand what exactly I'd been through. And I kept notes. I used to write notes in these little books in the cemetery, in treatment, all over the place. I had these little books, and I'd write notes all the time, and I'd get hit with insights, and I'd write and I'd write and I'd write. And I'm glad I did, because there was some cool stuff that I wrote down that I'm glad I captured. And some of it's in the book. Again, it's not, I don't even think you can buy that book anymore. But, and again, it's not an advertisement to buy that book. It's just, that book is part of my story. And I wanted to bring it up in this video, because that book, I think the most powerful thing, beyond getting all the insights or relearning and revisiting experiences and reintegrating these insights that I'd had in those powerful moments, the biggest thing about that book was that my father read that book, and he read it 3 times. He said, he called me up and he said he finally knew who I was, and that was the greatest gift that that book ever gave me. And even if I'd sold 100 million copies and became a multimillionaire from it, that was amazing. Not because I had a particularly strained relationship with my father, but I always felt like my dad didn't understand me, like probably many, many people, maybe even you. And so I went over, and my mother actually called me one time and said, what's in that book, and I was like, it's a story about, going crazy and having cancer and all this other shit. And she's like, well, your father's in there reading it and he's crying. And it was like, holy shit, like that's some powerful stuff, and I got all scared and nervous. And then I just kind of heard slash felt this feeling slash voice that said, no, man, this is like, this is what this is. This is why you wrote this. This is one of the reasons. And it was very powerful. And my father's consequently moved on, popped out of the meat suit, and he's enjoying the great mystery as we speak. And that made his death a hell of a lot easier, because we weren't trying to figure it all out on his deathbed. It was more of me helping him, taking him through his life, and getting him excited about the potential of what the afterlife could be, as opposed to wringing our hands in fear and desperation and being terrified and making him feel worse than he already was as a dying man, So, and the man had a great life. This is not a sob story about my father's death, or certainly my experience of it. It was a beautiful death for all intents and purposes. Hard, sure, but I'm very happy with how we ended things. And again, we didn't have a tumultuous relationship, but my dad, I always just thought he thought I was a nutcase, right? But he really got me from that book, and I'm glad I wrote it. But it is there are some cringy things in it, not gonna lie. But anyways, all this to say, that experience shaped very much. It made me into a person, that really wants to take my time on earth and help people to the best of my abilities. Not all the time, I get burnt out. I was a facilitator for a long time. I worked in high schools and alternate schools, doing mental health programs and suicide intervention and all kinds of stuff. Just trying to take what I learned and help people, especially, young, screwed up kids that were just trying to find their way, and being an adult that sat there and listened to them and had something to offer that wasn't just another adult sort of giving them a shit and telling them they were fuck ups, So I've always tried to celebrate people, and I've always tried to be a celebration machine. And this book was a huge part of it. And being a cancer patient slash cancer, I prefer the word veteran, because it's an experience you go through. Survivor just feels it's a lack feeling. And I don't even celebrate my cancerversary or whatever. Not because I'm, I think I'm above it, but I just, I don't know. It's not the whole story. It's just a chapter, And I've forgotten most times till someone reminds me or saying, hey, man, happy anniversary, whatever. And I'm just like, I remember I did one of those Relay for Life. Tom Green, you should come talk on my show, because, God damn it, I was on your Relay for Life team. I think you were in LA, but I was on the Tom Green's Nut Relay for Life team. So we have that in common. But as we're walking around, and I've done that Relay for Life thing a couple of times, and I've asked to speak at some, and I did. But I remember walking around thinking, man, like I'm pretty sure I caused this in myself, and that caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. And I felt really embarrassed and weird about it. And I guess it was a way of taking responsibility of it. But I felt like, it's like on your birthday, you should be sending your mother a card, and your parents a card. It should be about celebrating them. Like, what did you do? You showed up. I get it. But the whole thing is, being someone who's lived the experience of cancer, whether if I gave it to myself or not is another video for sure. But the point is it's just a part of who I was and who I am. And it only made me a deeper, more connected, more caring, more curious human being that allows me to, the good thing about being ripped apart and being blown open by experience is that it leaves a lot of room for whatever you decide to put back there. So if this is you and you're, that's the other thing, you forget that this is somebody's day one in that experience, right? You experience things and then you kind of, because it's all about us, right? We're always the main character. But like, to withhold that is, you might be denying somebody the comfort that they really need in the moment they're in. Like just when I had my first massive panic attack, I would have loved to know that it wasn't like going to be forever. I would have loved somebody further down the line to say, hey, describe to me what I was experiencing. And then say it's not necessarily going to be like that. It's not forever. This is just a fucking nightmare you're living right now. But it can and will change if you're willing to take a breath and keep moving and not cash your chips. So that's sort of why I'm still doing this stuff, and I'm still interested in helping people, and because what the hell else are we here to do? Well, there's lots to do, but I've never felt any more satisfaction than helping people, whether it was as a musician, because I mean, I assume everyone knows that too, but I was in a band for a very long time called Loud Love, and we played, powerful rock reggae music and connected people, and it was all about, again, just finding the good in things, and even in the trenches of your own shit, trying to find that little bit of light and not quit on yourself permanently, and to just bring some light to the world. And so being a cancer patient / veteran is a part of my story. And my wife thought I should clarify that to people, considering that not everybody knows me. And that's, I don't think they do, but I'm new to this shit. Give me a break. But that is part of my story. So if that's something you're going through right now, you or your family or someone you love, because don't get me started on caregivers. You guys are the shit, in my opinion. If you're a caregiver, I've got nothing but respect for you. Being the patient's one thing, and it sucks, and I'm not taking it away, but man, being the caregiver is I cannot wait to talk to professional caregivers and shine some light on them, because I have so much respect. Obviously, my wife, I'm her biggest fan, and she was an absolutely incredible caregiver. She just took care of my ass all week, but I'm not sick. I was just sick. But I watched that woman push weight and move mountains and do it with so much grace and love and with absolutely no concern or I can't even get started about her. She took care of both her parents, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's one of the reasons I fell in love with the woman, because I couldn't do what she did. I have so much respect for my wife and for people like her. I told her, I'm not going to put her in that position. I'm going to get somebody to run me over and end me so that she can just not have to deal with it. But all this to say, if you're going through that stuff, I'm glad you found this channel, and I hope that you can watch the videos and find something in it that brings you some comfort. And I just wanted to explain that was a part of my history and part of what makes me who I am, and another one of the many reasons why I am the Celebration Machine, and this is the Celebration Machine podcast. That's why it exists. One of the reasons. So that's the video for this week. I'm sick, I'm rambling, I'm tired, but I am going to be having a guest for the next video. I'm very excited, and I just wanted to share a little bit more about who I was as I build this channel, and as we sort of get to know each other. So thank you so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. Whatever you're going through, keep going. Don't forget to take a big breath. As crazy as life can get, and as freaky as the world can get, it's still a beautiful place. And it's even better with you in it, unless you're a piece of shit. But even then, that can be discussed. So, I'm tired. I'm going to go now. Thank you so much for your time. This is the Celebration Machine. Bye for now.